Good afternoon, everyone. This is Chip Knight here in the COE in Park City. Welcome to our webinar. With me here today is Sasha Rierick and Marianne Chernigoy. We're going to review the recent Alpine D Team August camps. The women were in Saas-Fee and the men were in New Zealand. For those of you who are new to the webinar, we are doing this as a initiative this summer as part of our new Project 26 program to be more communicative and transparent about what we're doing at the development team level, to describe the camps, describe the goals of the camps, the plans, and share some key take-home messages. Again, in this new D team model, it's really important that we're working together in collaboration, and that athletes, the handoff for the athletes between D team and club, and between Sasha and Marianne and the club coaches is as efficient and smooth as possible, so that we're all speaking the same language and everyone understands what the important steps are going forward. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Marianne, and he'll cover the women's camp first, and then Sasha will go after him, and we'll try and carve out some time in the last 15 minutes or so for question and answer. Marianne?
Good afternoon from me as well. So like Chip introduced, my name is Marianne Chernigoy. I'm a head coach for the women's development team. Saas-Fee camp in August. The dates were August 13 to September 4th. So 21 days total planned, 16 days planned on snow. Out of 16, we have realized 15 days, which is at that time of the year on the glaciers in the summer, really good number. But before any numbers, goals, reviews, and so forth, I just want to say that this was really fun and also very productive camp. Saas-Fee really provided as an environment everything what we designed to do. It was a great environment from the standpoint that we had a great hard snow almost through the entire camp, for sure for the first 2 weeks. That the variety of terrain is incredible, that you can go from flat to moderate to steep to short to long, from slalom to super G. So all that was there, and I believe we took advantage of that. The other thing I'm saying that was fun, I mean, the girls that we had there, plus coaching staff, I think we really hit it off well together. The girls were very enthusiastic about the work. They work hard. They were hungry for the information. They ask questions. On the snow, there was never a question, should we do a run more or should we do this or that? They pretty much were just soaking in the information and a daily load. As a group, they were fun as well. I mean, I could see how well they got along, which was big part. And also the coaching staff that I had there helping me out was really helpful, experienced and helpful. So I'm going to introduce people that were working with me. Was Sean Goodwin, currently from Loveland, and working with Nicola Roundtree Williams. Then was Brett Jacobson from Sugar Bowl Academy, FIS women's coach from there. 2 athletes on the roster were from his team. And joining us also from Sugar Bowl Academy was Brandy Barna, the ATC for the first 2 weeks. We shared Brandy with B and C team, who we work with there for 2 weeks. On the athletes side, for the very first time, I actually had a chance to work with all 5 girls from the D team, and that was Keely Cashman, Nellie Talbot, Zoe Zimmerman, Ainsley Prophet, Nicola Roundtree Williams, and then 2 invitees, Bryn Hitchcock from Park City and Gwen Watermaker from Sugar Bowl Academy. So again, having finally the D team in most respects together was really fun for me to see how everybody interacts, works together. But at the same time, I for the first time had a chance to see the span from the the girls born 99 all the way to newcomers to the team born 2002 and 2001. The level of ski technique, knowledge, ski tuning, athletic performance or athletic abilities, it's a huge span from the one to another. So that by itself presented a big challenge, but something I can be probably better prepared in the future, now knowing all the components of the team. Going back to the staff, I was pretty much in charge of a daily plan and having it executed. But Sean and Brett actually saw their place right away. The most help that I really needed was around the ski room with the equipment, because I also completely took over the daily conditioning, planning, and execution. So there was plenty to do, and these two guys did a phenomenal job for me as far as the auxiliary things go. Brandy was busy for 2 weeks. We had actually one accident. Gwen has dislocated the shoulder, was kind of short in and out, but still that needed ongoing treatment for the rest of the camp. Same with some other girls that had some minor issues, but Brandy was really helpful in this respect, plus taking over some of the conditioning in the afternoon for the athletes who could not absorb daily plan. Goals of the camp, pretty much here on the first page, you can see the goals that we outline at the athlete invitation. They were based on what we saw in Mount Hood in June, and pretty much we stuck to those all the way through. And then I wrote down some additional ones for the events. But we wanted to continue on the fundamental skill development, which it's going to be ongoing team, maybe a little bit less, of course, in November because of the proximity of the racing season, but that's going to be with us on and off for the entire time. We had really good, varied training environments. Like I said, there in Saas-Fee provided us with all the components of that, and with the pace exposure, B and C team there was super helpful. I really want to thank Magnus in the name of everybody involved there to be so accommodating for our athletes to slide into his course, and pretty much we did and worked as a one unit there, and that was in Super G and in Giant Slalom. So I think altogether we trained 5 days, which is much more than I was hoping for or planning to do, but it was really a nice add to our goals. Then the additional goals is pretty much, again, going back to deficiencies of the individual athletes or as a group. And again, they were based on observation in Mount Hood camp. And again, when I look at these goals right now, we have stuck to those points in our daily preparation for on-hill work. I'm not gonna, everybody can see, I'm not gonna read through this, waste of time, but you can see that we tackled the 3 events at that camp. I want to go further on in the slalom environment. Because we've done so much slalom in Mount Hood, slalom was definitely on a back burner for Saas-Fee camp. We planned for 3 days. Actually, we planned for 5 days, but the last 2 days we did lose because of the new snow. But 3 days is what we got, and we really wanted just to touch on it, that we don't forget between June and later camps. But even those 3 days have proved to be quite challenging for the execution of a certain elements. One of the days, I think it was the second day of the progression, it got really cold. The entire snow froze, just like to the situation that you have usually when you go indoor skiing, where it's very slick and icy. And without the good equipment and ever changing or touching the edges again, it was pretty much impossible to ski down the hill in a form, you know, that somebody would say, okay, there's a ski racer coming down. There was a lot of sliding going on that day. But going a little bit back to the goals of slalom, pretty much athletic stance was a big goal. Athletic stance through the, you know, all phases of the turns. And this we kind of stuck with for those 3 days. Pole plant is something I think we are beating the bush on all the time, and we should. I still, you know, up till this camp, there was an athlete that have never done a pole planting progression before, you know, and this is a D team level. This is it really struck me hard, and you know, then we did what we did. We went to the 1 meter vertical brushes and some very short constrained basis slalom sets, so we could start with a pole plant, start with a basic movement, trying to get the skis to the, you know, onto the edges, and try to work a little bit on those things. The progression was kind of followed also with the progression of the trying to pick tougher hills. We went from very flat to moderate and to a little steeper. Again, the steeper, I remember now back, that was the day when the situation, when the snow got really, really difficult to ski on. And, you know, it kind of provided that something we were not planning on. It provided an extreme challenge, and some girls acted the way they acted, got really frustrated, and you know, the glacier was full of their equipment. And then some girls, they wanted to go back up and try again, even though they were not able to do really well because of the edges were already dull. But they went in there and tried to see if they can actually make it just to the course. And the course was set super simple. Again, I'm not gonna read through everything we've done. You see that on the screen. The slalom we just touched for the 3 days. It came after 5 days of intense GS progression. So what we saw was really that the pole plant it's not there yet, and that's pretty much across the board. That the feet were slow after the 5 days of GS. And you know, after 2-3 days, even slalom started to look like you know, we are making a progress. But just when we got to there, we switched back off to the other events, to Super G and GS. So there's just so much I want to say about the slalom. The giant slalom environment. This is really what I was after in this camp, together with the Super G. But giant slalom was the big emphasis. So the progressive terrain change, again, it was, you know, from flat to moderate to steep, from very tight sets, 21 meter regular sets, which actually came after the Super G training, and 21 meter, it felt like 8 or 10. It was unbelievable adaptations that the girls were put up to. And again, some responded quite well, and there were some frustrations, but we settled down to work and you know, try to make the best we could there. The sets, you know, if you know, whoever has been to Saas-Fee before, is, you know, the first guy sets the course and then 20 course copies that guy. So there doesn't leave much for the freedom of setting. One guy sets for the half of the hill, but nevertheless, from 21 to 28 meters did represent a good challenge for us on a daily basis. We use right off the back the vertical brushes. Here I'm saying outside ski change, but it could be, you know, when to make a move, when to start your new turn, and that was semi-successful. We had first one goal set the line. We set the brushes after. And what followed was, you know, sometimes more, sometimes less successful repetition of that line. We had the best with our GS skier set that line, and there was actually some girls that actually could not ski that line, and where the vertical brushes were represented a problem for them. So because we couldn't paint on the glacier, it's not allowed. We had to stick with with the brushes, and that was our response to to the tactical aid over there. We did a lot of runs without the poles. Almost everything what we've done was with and without the poles, or all 5 days. Then the training got more challenge, training together with the BC team, where the timing was out on a daily basis. That I was not so much concerned about the times, or was not concerned at all about the times at this time of the year and what we were working on. But racers wouldn't be racers when they see that they become competitive, and sometimes they work on the different things that we've been working on some points of a technique, not on a speed. We had a chance to train with the other national teams. Top 7 athlete was there with us for 1 full day. It was refreshing to go through the same course, which we could compare the line, the execution of technical elements, a little bit of tactics, and so forth, and seeing that really, the World Cup technique is not so much different to what we are doing right now, but it's really consistent from gate to gate and just tied together and with a good timing. So some girls actually felt really good about, that they had some components, but of course, the total picture is just not there yet. And the timing, I already touched that a little bit before. We really never timed the entire camp for the purpose of see the race type situation, to simulate it, or to see who's best, or any of this. We worked a lot of technique and tactics for the entire three weeks. In Super G environment, this was a great 3 days that we spent out of the 4 that were planned. And we were super lucky because the glacier, actually the slope for Super G, got open of the day of our reservation. So the day before or later would not be as possible anymore. As soon as we concluded our 3 days on snow, the Super G slope deteriorated quite a bit at the bottom. The glacier, because of the heat, started to climb up again. The fresh snow was disappearing. So I was glad that we were out of there, because I'm going to talk about this at the equipment. The glacier was tough on equipment. Pretty much all the skis from slalom, GS, and Super G, they have to go on a sander, and the skis have to be reworked because we beat them on a surface so much. But in Super G environment, we started the first day with a section course. It was really about 2/3 of the regular course. The bottom was not done yet, but there was a nice introduction into the speed. Of course, the girls, after 5 days of GS, they try to make Super G turns very quick, not having anything to do for next 20 meters, didn't know how to connect the turns together. And with the time that got better. The slope in Saas-Fee is really great for the introductory into speed. It's nothing difficult. We had not one single jump. It's a little bit rolly, but more on a flat, moderate side. And only the last pitch to the end of the glacier is where it gets a little bit more difficult. And we use that for the next 2 days. So full-length courses were really in play for the second and third day. That's when we also trained together with, again, with our B and C team, and a couple girls from the foreign teams from the World Cup. So that national teams overlap, or mixing that happened. It was just incredible benefit for us to show the girls a little bit on the video, and even on the hill. Timing, we did the timing with again with our BC team. It was not important for me to what the times really were saying at that point. I got here the pictures of a GS sample just to get a little bit snippet of what we were working on in GS. Coming back from June camp, I tried to figure out how would be the best way of making a progress in the next camp. So I put down a task for myself how to break down the technical elements and try to really focus on one element only at a time. So we talked it over with the coaching staff the day before, and we talked about one thing only the entire day on the hill. For example, if that was just, for the girls to make a forward move at the end of the previous turn at the transition point, we went to the first day and talked the entire day only about that. Of course, we saw they coming in too straight and they're making different mistakes, but our focus and our cues to them were not there. Only thing we wanted to do all day long is how they are moving forward, for example, in that day. Second day, we added the next component to it. So we would be talking about being forward and make a strong move forward at a transition, but how to also get from outside ski to the outside ski. The third day, we introduce, the lower leg engagement on top of the 3 layers that we did previous 3 days. And in 5 days, we actually came to the pressure into the fall line. So we connected in 5 days these 5 components that we wanted to look at and really drive them on a run per run basis on a daily basis. I think the girls caught on that pretty quick, and first we had some questions about other parts of the turn, but we just didn't want to get there. We always wanted to go back to, okay, but this is our focus. This is what we're trying to do. We're gonna get there, but first, this is a super important thing at the top of a turn. And my kind of theme was that if we solve the problems on the top of the turns, we'll get deeper into the turn later on. But how to start the turn in a balanced fashion, balanced position, and execute the technical elements on top of the turn correctly, that's how it's going to get us the furthest. So going at the picture there, it's actually, this is Nelly Talbot, one of the probably the best GS skier right now on a D team, and the 9 pictures there represent a little bit the top. I mean, there's also some of the turn and getting the completion of the turn, but it kind of represents our battle on the top of the turn the most. The athletes tend to shift their balance, the upper body weight too soon into the fall line. With that, they disengage, or the outside ski, it's in disadvantaged position to start a turn, to start the pressure on top of a turn, and the whole balance gets easier shifted towards the inside. So just the following picture shows that if you don't start a turn on top of a turn correctly in a balanced position, stay a little bit more over the skis longer, with sometimes we talk going deeper into the turn or going across the hill a little bit longer in a balanced position, then you have a problem with the lateral balance when it comes to the pressure at the gate. So this is where we spent the first 5 days and broke down that technical elements in this fashion. But representing here is really the majority of the problem, her being the best. You can imagine what else we encountered with the other girls, the problems. But mainly the thing is, we are still at the point of the transfer, at the point where we're just about to initiate a new turn. We are in a backseat. We are not in a balanced position. And when we're in a backseat position, everything from there on will probably be disconnected. Beside leaning in, doing the entire body inclination in order to help the skis to come around, everything follows because of the poor balance at the transition and at the top of the turn. So I'll be open to some questions later on about that, but this is how we approach the technical element of GSs on top of a turn, initiation of the turn. Want to touch a couple other things that came up very strongly, and conditioning was definitely second biggest thing we worked on at the camp. Again, going back to see some girls for the very first time gave me the total picture of how well prepared the athletes are to execute a camp of this nature, 21 days, 3 events, and the elevation component. And, you know, I pretty much quickly came to the conclusion that I have to start with teaching almost everything from basic flexibility, how to execute flexibility, how to warm up, to everything that is that it should be absorbed by the athlete of this, D team, let's say, that they should already know before they come to our level. So we did core sessions almost on a daily basis. I'm not going to say every day, but that was the most prevalent execution we did, or the exercise we used, because I could see that most of the girls are, not strong in a core. Agility and quickness, this was just basic movement more on the field, where a lot of uncoordinated moves happen. So we've done that quite a bit. Running ABCs, try to teach and distinguish the athletes what means a jump, what's a bound, what's a leap, what's a hop. So a lot of these things were on a daily basis. We did this almost every day for the warm up to the other activities. Flexibility. I was blown away that, at 57, I was much more flexible than some girls. So, and actually that was their observation, not mine. They brought it up. But it's something I just couldn't believe. Even when I said at the end of the conditioning session, let's just stretch and this is it for the afternoon. Some of the athletes would sit around and look for the guidance in that as well. They would not be able to go from top to the bottom of their body and try to stretch on their own. So big teaching went into flexibility from there on. I taught 3 Olympic lifts with the bar only. This was very simple, one rainy day in the afternoon with a great gym. So we used that day for education for that, because not that their body weight is not enough yet for whatever they're trying to achieve on a strength progression, but they just, at this point where they are, they have to know the basic Olympic lifts for the improvement of their strength and power. Strength circuit, whatever we were doing on the strength was pretty much divided into 6 to 8 different stations, and we would move the girls around the stations. The stations were pretty much designed so everybody could do it without a lot of teaching, and they would get a lot out of it. It was all body weight strength circuits, the 3 or 4 days that we did it. Plyometric training, again, that was done on one of the, actually same day as Olympic lift education. I can pretty comfortably say that we did about 1,000 jumps that day, something that was very, some were done on a ladder. It was pretty much almost agility and quickness, but not in a plyometric sense. But then we did also some very tough jumps with a medicine ball and with a soccer ball and so forth. But I think most of the athletes were first time introduced to something like this. The day after the plyometric training, I was very conscious of, if somebody has heavy legs, and the second day was our day off. We went into the pool and they had a chance to get a recovery day after that. So nothing was lost to that heavy day in the gym. This was actually, that plyometric training was our second session of the day, because we lost the day on the snow, and next day we knew that it's going to be bad weather, so we took that as a day off, as it is, ahead of the time. We used the hikes on the mountain sometimes for the pretty much almost all the time for the recovery, so they were not difficult. They were all maxed to 1 hour. Pretty much every afternoon activity was maxed at 45 minutes to 1 hour. Not one time we went further than 1 hour. I mean, I'm pretty firm believer that the ski camps are for skiing and conditioning camps are for conditioning. So I try to get the most out of the on snow sessions, and afternoon sessions were more in the recovery and education components. Ski equipment. Looks like I'm taking a lot of time, so I'm going to breeze through this. I mean, some very fundamental things. Some girls still showed up with only one pair of ski per event to the ski camp. I mean, that's just not acceptable. We're not in a tourist business. I go with one pair, but the athlete should have at least 2 pairs per event, not just at the camp, but on the hill, ready to go 100%. Because they figure out very quickly if the 2 pairs of skis were not completely tuned to the max already after the warm-up runs, which we usually had at least 4, their skis were already dull. Going into the gates, that was, praying and hoping. It was executable after that. So we had, files and stones with us on the hill, but we drove that point to the girls hard, because in Zermatt and Saas-Fee, it's not easy to come with 2-3 pairs from the bottom to the top. It takes 1 hour with a big backpack and all the equipment, but it's just something that they have to do. It's part of the deal. And again, I'm bringing this up, next to them in a gondola with the Swedish girls with 3 slalom pairs, and they saw that it can be done. So 3 pairs of slalom to get through the day was what it was almost needed to still have sharp skis and the skis you can trust on the course. Boots, very quickly here. This is something I'm going to talk a lot to the individual coaches. We measured at this camp all the setups from the boots, bindings, canting, ramps, everything what we have, I have recorded for all the girls to the camp. And I can say that not 2 girls are canted or the same. So there's, a lot of degrees from minus to plus in canting. There's different ramp angles. There's different heights on the toes and on the tail, on heels. So all that I have, and I'll talk to coaches of these athletes, and somehow it looks like a lot of education needs to happen on this level as a boot setup already, the D team level. I made a lot of effort to talk to all the servicemen in Europe that I saw there from the walk-up skiers, and it seems like we are complicating much more than they are. They were very much in a neutral position, how they come out of the factory setups. I did not see or not heard a lot of stories about some 4 degrees canting in or out and things like that. That did not happen with the walk-up skiers. They were set up very neutral and simple. Poles, I mean, it's so fundamental. I mean, I'm embarrassed to write things like this down, but the girls came without the poles, for example, for Super G. So again, it's just something I have to mention again, so that the next time we go out, that they have the equipment to do the job. Setup, I told, it's a challenge. Tuning and maintenance, I was really lucky that these 2 guys helped the girls on a daily basis, so we knew that the girls are going up on the hill with skis that were ready to go. Whatever we had, it was ready to go. And this is still a big educational component we have to do with the athletes on this level, because they have a lot to learn how to prepare their equipment for performance. Lessons learned, I almost went through this already, but on the snow, I mean, moving forward, it's still a big mystery, especially when you go from flatter to the steeper terrain. We had GS on a very steep terrain one of the last days, and being behind the skis was the biggest theme there. It was it really represented a challenge to them to move forward enough on a steep hill in order to ski the way they wanted to ski, the line they wanted to ski. Same is, from moving from outside ski to outside ski, or, from completion to initiation. That has, tremendous work still waiting, and pole plant that I'm not going to beat that up again, but we're going to continue with it. Conditioning, I pretty much mentioned everything. I'm not going to repeat stuff there, but I had a feeling that some of the girls are just not playing the games at home, or are not part of the either PE program or a structural conditioning program. So that's going to be my big message when I, talk to the coaches and clubs and so forth, that the level of that has to move up. Equipment, just cover that, and I'll leave it at that point.
Great, thanks, Marian. We're going to switch over to Sasha now, and he'll cover the men's camp in New Zealand.
Good afternoon, everybody. We had a great camp in New Zealand, fantastic conditions, skiing in locations that the World Cup teams have been using and the Europa Cup teams over the years. We were able to provide a high quality venue at lower altitude and be able to ski tremendous amount of volume. The camp, we had 11 athletes at the camp. They're listed there. Special thanks to Matt Underhill and Jeremy Transu for coming and joining us for this camp. They did a fantastic job of working into the progression, taking on responsibility and execution. Special thanks to Matt also for being our boot fixer guy down there, because there was, as Marian said, there's some boot work that needed to be done, and Matt took that on. But special thanks to that. It was also fun for me to work with an old athlete of mine and actually dorm resident, Jeremy, to connect back to with him on the coaching side of things, which was super fun. The goals of the camp were, the past goals have always been more on the fundamental side. This time we were really more focused on the movements to maintain balance and athletic stance. We made good progress with this, coming out of the turn especially. I would say we still have work to do, quite a bit of work to do, of that movement continuing all the way into the apex. The other major goal technically was to really establish the platform with the ankle knee quicker. The past camps we'd focused on establishing that platform and working with that internal femur rotation and having that upper and lower body separation, but now is really more about establishing that platform quicker. We were going to focus on the performance transition, but getting down to New Zealand with certain athletes, we saw that the fundamentals were breaking down as we hit winter snow. So that was probably less of a camp focus. On certain athletes, it was definitely worked on, but it was less of a focus. This camp, I did want to introduce the concept of pumping or swinging on the skis. So using the center of mass, where you direct the center of mass to the skis to get the ski to bend in a different way, and also pumping to generate speed. And we used a swing competition to start to get that concept going. And for sure, as the camp progressed, in certain situations where we were training on the flats, we really tried to emphasize that. Tactical goals, again, was pressure in the fall line, skiing to the wall. I have to say I'm impressed with the group's progress. The difference between a World Cup groove and a Europa Cup groove and a junior team groove is always just where the pressure point is relative to the fall line. And as a group, they've moved that substantially much closer to the fall line. So that's been a good step. Releasing the ski to ski a more direct line. We haven't been talking too much so far this prep camp about skiing more direct, but this was definitely the time to start to look for some speed. We're making progress on this, but it was shocking how often we had to come back to it and remind the athletes, release the ski down the hill, ski a more direct line. And the other tactical goal was adaptability in turn shape and tempo. We hit some of this at the other camps, but this was much more a focus. Every course set we set, there was a rhythm change of some sort, either distance or tempo or turn shape every 6 to 8 gates. And I would say we're making good adaptation to maintain an average speed through the course. That's improved substantially. Now really it's adapting to easy sections, like where there's an easy section, how much more direct or how much more can I push the line in those sections, and then ski a little bit rounder in the more difficult sections. Other goals, culture. A big part of coming out of Hood for me was to create a greater sense of urgency. This is as a group, I feel we're making progress here. Now the question is whether it's sticking. And that, what I mean by that is, are the athletes putting in the time in conditioning in between the camps? Are they getting home, getting recovered, and getting the time on the load, on the bike, on the gym, doing the core sessions? Are they putting in the 18 to 22 hours a week needed? That's where it's, once we can get that to stick, then I could really measure that goal as we're making progress. On the mental side, we really stepped up the red letter days, as I like to call them. I want to put pressure on the athletes at different times in the camp in different ways. Long-term athletic development, I really believe the ability to handle pressure, to work with pressure, is critical that athletes practice it and get exposed to it often. And I'm proud of how the coaching staff and the athletes approach this, and I would definitely say this was accomplished. Many lessons were learned. Some athletes struggled with pressure situations, but then took it upon them, or took it within the coaching staff to have good discussions of what to do the next time. We saw growth in this area. And also, we've been talking about growth mindset, and the athletes have all come to the camps with a fantastic growth mindset, which has been fantastic. But now is really the growth mindset to a bumpier road, continually challenging the athletes. And by the end of the camp, I would say as a whole, the group of athletes really progressed in this. Initially, some athletes were in a really good place handling the challenges, but we saw frustrations build in different points in the camp, and the ability to move forward and stay focused on the present is something they still need to really work on. But the growth mindset to the bumpy road is going to be challenging. Was a focus of the camp. Conditioning, I call it connectivity or coordination. We used core, full body strength, and plyos. We did core almost every day. On the core side, the first part of the camp, we really challenged the guys on the conditioning side. What I was seeing was not enough work had been done by a majority of the group between Hood and New Zealand. So I was a little bit trying to make a point that they needed to get some work done. What I saw was athletes making gains during the first 10 days of the camp, conditioning was, which is cool to see, but also we shouldn't be able to make those gains. So that was another sign that not enough work's being done in between camps. On the core side, for the athletes that have been training, it's clear who's been training. We really pushed more the endurance side of core. Everybody's done a good job of learning the basic core movements and being able to hold good plank, good position, good stability with TA and multifidi and that kind of stuff. But now it's about endurance. They were able to do it for 10 seconds. Now can we push it to 60, 90 seconds? And even our very most fit guys were failing at about 50 to 60 seconds. So that's something that we need to push forward in the future. Strength and plyos were introduced all in a multi-directional, multi-plane format, used as stimulation for the next sessions. And I would say during the first half of the camp, we accomplished that. I had to pull back on dryland substantially because we were also skiing a very high volume and it was just too much. Recovery and mobility. I feel like the athletes are doing okay now on their own or doing those sessions within their own groups. And we've had some of the older athletes lead those and they do quite well. Just in terms of methodology of the camp, we started out free skiing, then we went into directed drills for about 2 days. In general, we went from easy terrain in Round Hill to mid-length courses. Everything had been short courses pretty much prior to this camp. So we progressed into mid-length courses for parallel slalom, GS, and slalom. We progressed on to OHAL for steeper, longer. We used constraint and normal courses. In general, there was much more, let's call it legal courses, from 22 to 24 meters to 30 meters. There was less constrained courses, but there were still some days of constrained courses. We revisited free skiing and directed drills several times through the camps. After getting beat up on longer courses, longer, steeper terrain, we shortened everything up. but had more challenging terrain in terms of a lot of rolls. In Cornet Peak, again, revisited free skiing and directed drills, and then worked back to finish the camp on easy terrain and Round Hill. I kind of like that circular pattern. And when we look at the video from the start of the camp to the end of the camp, we see good progress. And I think coming back to free skiing and doing some drills and mixing the terrain was successful. One of the ways we made the road bumpier so that the athletes always had to adapt is because we had 11 athletes there, that after about 3 runs, we would always change the course. Matt Underhill brought this in as one of his kind of cornerstones to his coaching, and we did it here. We just moved the course straighter, and I really liked it. We'd start out maybe on the very turny side. Then the next 3 runs were maybe more normal set, and by the end, the last 3 runs was very straight. And we saw adaptations going on, and we kept that kind of theme going through the whole camp. On some days, we just flipped the terrain, or flipped the gates, so that the athletes were skiing the terrain on the opposite foot, so going over a roll on the left foot instead of the right foot. This made it bumpy, the road, for the athletes. As soon as they start to figure a course out, we would switch it on them, and that frustrated some guys because they want that feeling that they're making progress. I understand that, but at the same time, if they're going to be successful long term, they have to be adaptable. We want to continually challenge them. I really liked how we did that and how it kept the focus really intense for 8 to 9 runs a day. We did do overlength slalom and full length slalom. I would say that the guys hated me for a couple days because of those days, but skiing 80 turns on steep terrain, hard winter snow, you get a real quick view of who skis efficiently. And being able to ski efficiently is an important component of the development. The theme of how we kind of, like Marion said, that they talked about, one technical element per day. We kind of had a moving theme. Definitely started out with balanced athletic stance, quickly moved in from movement out of the turn or from apex to apex. We wanted to bring that concept from movement from apex to apex into GS. But right away, we saw that the athletes were skiing way too round. So therefore, there was a hiccup in that movement from apex to apex. So we took a step back as a coaching staff, and we said, okay, no, we are going to now really look at the line. So we make the athletes come down, look at the line, reset, and try it again. That hook at the end of or skiing around our line puts a hiccup in their transition and their movement, and it doesn't allow it to link together. So really releasing the ski to ski that direct line took a lot of cycles to get that going. Then part of the issue of skiing or moving the apex to apex, we saw that the athletes were dropping their hip too early. So we had to take a step back and really focus on moving the hip to the wall. Inside too early. Then we went back on our program of skiing direct and flats, pumps, and swings. And then going into, as we planned, ankles and knees to establish the platform. In slalom, we saw that the efficiency of skiing, that's critical. Establishing that platform within a ski length. So you're on your inside edge and you're rolling that thing and you can go from one edge to the other, right, when it's underneath you. Releasing the ski, and then by the end, we kind of did a revisit to see where our position is on our skis, and we kind of focused at the apex. What's our apex position? Are we level in the shoulders? Are we level in the hips? Are our hips over our feet? And it was pretty interesting to see. The athletes as a whole, as a group, have done a tremendous job of getting their hips over their feet in a much better way. And I would say that level shoulders, level hips is improving. But when we see turn to turn consistency from top to bottom, we don't see enough of it yet. So that reminder was good. Here's just some pictures of kind of what I mean by early hip. And on the left here, we can see the athlete kind of creating hip angulation. You can see with that green line right here, kind of well before the gate. And that causes that you can't really be balanced on the outside ski. You have to just wait, and there's nothing you can do until you get past the gate. We can see here where the athlete is at the quote apex of the turn. Skis are right in the fall line and there's still no pressure. So this is kind of an example of what we're seeing a lot of. So what we did was we ended up painting a blue line straight up the hill called the blue branch drill, just to give them kind of a visual cue of where they could bring their hip in. We also did it on the outside, kind of the wall drill. And for some athletes, the wall drill seems to really help them. Others, it doesn't. Some athletes, this vertical blue line that we drew with dye seemed to really help them. So we did that for a couple of days to try to get to a point where when we're right above the gate, we got the skis on edge, we've got the platform established, but we don't create a whole lot of hip angle prior to this point. I wouldn't say this is perfect execution, but this is a better example over here on the right side. And then establishing the platform correctly. We can see here the athlete right here in transition has just rolled his ankle knee, and he's now found that platform. He's balanced on this edge, the new outside ski. And because of that, a frame or two later, we can see that the ski is bending. The apex, as soon as he's going by the gate, he's able to release the ski. So that's what I'm talking about by establishing that platform. It's done in a very quick amount of time. It's not creating high edge angle right away. It's just, are you balanced on that edge? And is there a weight transfer? You can see here the weight transfer occurring on the top left. This is more of an advanced turn, like a performance turn. You can see the ski bending. His hip is not in a great position. Not in a great position. But if we look, can you guys see?
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, so if we look at the next clip on the bottom right, we see that at the apex, the hip is over the foot. So from an effectiveness of that turn, it's good. But the other progress, yes, we can bring that hip more forward, movement forward. But I've spent more time focusing on that apex position to make sure that that's good. And what I've found is if the apex position is good, the rest will come together. The volume of skiing, we skied 16 days. We had 6 days off on there. That's it's one less day of skiing than planned. And we ended up having a weather day, which in the end, I think was actually a blessing in disguise. It gave us 2 days off right in the middle of the camp to get the guys recovered, which was actually probably well needed based on the volume we were skiing. We had 15 sessions of slalom, close to 4,000 turns, 17 sessions of GS, just over 2,000 turns. We did 3 sessions of panel slalom, and free ski and directed free ski 7 and 6 sessions. So high volume camp without a doubt, but I feel that the athletes were able to handle it for the most part. The days that we skied long courses, the athletes that don't have the base or the conditioning, definitely the wheels came off the bus on those days. Talked about that. Ski equipment. We did test some models of skis. The athletes that were able to bring down some different models. We found out some good information to give back to the companies. Setups. We didn't play around a whole lot with setups. Mainly what I saw was athletes that weren't able to move on their skis, either move forward or move to the outside. We really spent time looking at their setups. What we found is very often those athletes have a gas pedal setup, meaning that there's a negative ramp angle, that the toe is higher than the heel. As soon as we dropped them down to flat or even maybe 2 millimeters down, we were able to see much better movement. For sure, it took a day or two to adjust to it, but we saw better movement in their skiing, more athletic skiing. Same thing on the boots. We saw some athletes come in with some pretty stiff boots. Matt was able to help us out and soften them just a little bit, and that seemed to help a lot. We also did see quite among a few athletes coming in with an aggressive canting to the outside. So we canted them in to pretty much neutral or just inside of neutral, And after a day, we start to see much more athletic, fluid skiing. So I think one of the take-home messages is that as we work with our athletes, the shortcuts of gas pedal are more aggressive. Yes, you may find a little bit more speed for a short period of time, but it limits the athlete's ability to really improve their skiing fundamentally, and their movement patterns and adaptability. So I strongly discourage going to these kind of setups. I think keeping things much more neutral and making sure the athletes are moving in the right way is much more benefit for them long term. Lessons learned. Fundamentals did break down as we got on the winter snow. Some of the athletes had made good progress with fundamentals, kind of skiing on the salted snow of Mammoth and Squaw and Hood. But once we got on that winter snow, we saw the fundamentals break down. But because they had that base of training, we were able to bring it back pretty quickly. Established platform, we spend more time. One thing going forward, we need to spend in the next camps much more time looking at and training straight open courses, easy courses. We've done a lot of the constraint base. We've done some constraint base on very straight courses, but I would say on the rhythm and timing, we're in a decent spot for this level of athlete on kind of 26-meter tourney GS. 28-meter, 30-meter GS, we need to spend some time letting the ski go down the fall line and being comfortable with skiing a more direct line. We are much more forward. Greater attention to level shoulders is important. We're making progress there, but the level shoulders or level hips. Some of the athletes are getting their shoulders level by that kind of pinch in the, let's call it the side of their stomach. But we still see the hips tipped in from a fundamental point of view. So allowing that inside knee and leg to bend up in the turn, I believe, is important that we spend some time on that in the future. Conditioning. The athletes learn mobility exercises to work as partners to really allow that internal femur rotation. We saw real good buy-in, and all of a sudden the athletes helping each other and working on that every morning for morning warm-up. Core endurance we talked about, and as a group we have to do much more work outside of camp. Strength and endurance. We're going to give a little trial here on video. Or we don't have any, where's the next one? This one. But at the same time, while we did that, we also did, more advanced constraint-based course.
Andrew, run 3 on
And here's an example of some slalom. Here's 80 gates. One of the red letter challenge days was 80 gates. They had to complete 4 runs within a certain.
Ben, run 1.
gate. Split time, 31:23. Gate above the flush.
Ben, run 1.
On video. It wasn't.
Thanks, Sasha. So we're right at 2 o'clock. Recognize that people may have to leave, but we'd like to also stay on the line for some Q&A. There's 2 ways of doing that in this format. You should see a question box on your screen where you can type a question. We have a few already. Thank you very much. You can also raise your hand if you see that icon on your screen. You can raise your hand and we can open your audio up. But for now, we'll start with the questions that have been asked. Brad Wall asks, how many days total did the D team girls get in the prep period? And how has this been planned with their physical training blocks? Looking ahead to next year, do you think this group will ski more or less in the prep period?
Brad, yes, you remember I got to the job at June 1st, so I actually had only 2 camps with the girls, one in Mount Hood, and now this one was the second one in Saas-Fee. I solicited the information to get the prior skiing from all the athletes. I do have that information for most of them, but I know that when I came and made the camp announcement for June, a lot of the athletes already had previous plans to go to New Zealand, to Chile, to Europe, indoor, everywhere else in the world. So I can only say that, we skied now so far 23 days, that projects on a conditioning side, they definitely not support this on snow time, and that goes back to the, I believe, planning. Maybe Chip can speak more about this, because when we try to do the conditioning camps, I get the same answers from the girls, from the coaches, that they already made different plans prior I came to the job. So that's nothing to take the responsibility away from it, but it's just the fact that the hiring to this position came very late, and there was not much work done on this level in early spring and early summer. The last part of the question about next year plan. Yes, I do have a plan right now to have 5 projects on snow, with also some conditioning projects. So that definitely is the case, that I want to add 1 camp in October. That is still a moving target, I believe, at this point, but I would like to add 1, because the regions, the clubs are already doing it, but I would like to continue the progression that I'm doing with the girls from midsummer and then over to the winter. I'd like to bridge that time, which I think it's important that we get more on snow time with athletes of this age. I hope I answered that to some degree. Maybe Chip has something to add with the spring and early summer plans for this group.
Yeah, just Marianne touched on it mostly, but we had a plan in place to do 15 or 17 days in the spring in Mammoth and Squaw, and the men were able to achieve that. But on the women's side, it took us a little longer to get Marianne or the head coach in place. So we weren't able to achieve that goal of that spring fundamental camp. But we will do that going forward. That's in the plan. And we'll look for more feedback on our planning in general, and how you all think it will work for next year. Definitely like some input on that. Sash, do you want to just briefly cover the men, how many days they've had, and how that's gone with the conditioning blocks?
Yeah, so the men have had 40 days already of programming offered. Only 2 athletes have been to all those camps, and that's Andrew Miller and Ben Ritchie, which is one of the challenges of putting together progressions and content is that you're, like, for example, I didn't mention this in the presentation, but the athletes that were at Hood were ready and able to handle the steeper, longer courses that we experienced in New Zealand. The athletes that weren't in Hood that was too much of a jump, too quick. So I think that was a over the top progression for them. So that's one of the things we need to talk through as a group and figure out how we do in the future. But right now we're at 40 days and we're going to get another 12 in Colorado. Conditioning wise, we've had two conditioning camps. Again, similar situation where some athletes have been to one and not the other, or some have been to both.
Thanks, Sasha. I guess the only other questions we have here are some feedback that the audio was cutting out when we're displaying the videos. Thanks for letting us know that. We'll continue to work on our IT solutions with showing video. We think it's a really great feature of these webinars to be able to illustrate through video what the coaches are seeing and talking about on the hill with the athletes, but also trying to share with all of you. So we'll keep working on it. Apologies for the audio this time around. Are there any other questions? Please feel free to type it in the box or use the raise your hand feature